days after the Supreme Court decision in Trump v. Casa Inc. Again, this is a Percy King Speak podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about this case was about birthright citizenship. It's about the executive order that President Trump put out. And here's the thing. This decision, which basically strips both the district courts and the courts of appeal strips your ability to put out universal injunctions that, apply to all citizens. It's a really big deal. Some people are trying to say it's not as big of a deal, but it truly is, and it's specifically a big deal with what we're dealing with right now, and it's going to be a big deal for many things. Because what most people don't understand is that one of the reasons why people even know about a lot of cases that have come through and about a lot of rights that, were allegedly violated is because a federal judge issued an injunction in the case. And then they said, man, I didn't know that they were even doing that. I didn't know that they could do that. Yeah, they shouldn't be able to do that. Now, basically what the six, and they'll say conservative justices said, is that they no longer have the right to do that, and they were basically extending the power that Congress gave them. And so now, although there are still ways of, getting, injunctions, these injunctions now only apply for the named plaintiffs. Now, initially, President Trump and his people were just trying to say that these decisions just should be locally, meaning that, at most it should be in the district that the judge was in, or maybe even the municipality, the city or the county or whatever. But they got a much bigger decision than even that, because they limit the injunctions to the named plaintiffs. So now that changes so much. And what people don't understand is that it takes a while for federal cases to make their way through the system so that the law is actually, whether it be changed or verified, that you can or can't do something. Now, years, and it costs a lot of money. Now, some people are fortunate enough that they'll have organizations that are willing to, pay the attorney's fees and fight for them. But other than that, if you don't have the money to do it, you could sell your house and may not be able to pay for federal suit that when you're trying to say that, whether it be the regular government entity or some business or whatever has violated, your constitutional rights. It costs a lot of money to be in federal court. I practice in federal court. Most attorneys don't. And, one of the reasons why I practice in federal court because I had a federal clerkship. And one of the reasons why it costs so much is because, one, like I said, a lot of attorneys don't practice in it. It is extremely specialized. It's really, to me, formulaic. If you don't know what you're doing there, you shouldn't be there. It's extremely formal as well. And you need to make sure that you know what you're doing. Like if you're in the middle district of Florida, and in certain other districts, you can't even, file a notice of unavailability. What that means is that whenever they call you, whenever they want you to come in and be in front of the judge, you got to be there. In our district, you could even be in trial somewhere in a state court case. And they say, okay, well, we'll call that state court judge and let them know you have to be here. Yeah, they'll do that. Yeah, it happens. So, because of that, you can't take on a lot of other cases possibly because you need to make sure that you are available. And so because these, cases cost so much money, now you have it so that only the named plaintiffs. So what that means is that a couple things. That means that as far as the birthright citizenship thing, some of the attorney generals have said, oh, well, it's still the law of the land because they didn't actually, rule on it. When it comes to the current president, the law of the land doesn't mean very much unless someone is actually going to stop him from doing something. And this decision allows him to keep going. So if you don't want this to happen to you, then you have a problem. And if you don't want other things that can possibly happen when it comes to other decisions that people are saying, oh, well, they're unconstitutional, doesn't make a difference. It may be the law of the land, but if you have to actually go to court yourself individually in order to get an injunction against it, you may have already suffered the harm before you can get into court, like some of the folks who have been deported to other prisons in other countries or whatever, and it may be the law of the land that couldn't happen, but it still happened. So there will be a lot of people who will have issues that may even be supporters, of President Trump, but then something may come up and it goes against them. And they're like, that's not fair. No, it is because, you said it was fair in this respect. Just because something doesn't harm you doesn't mean that later on something else might. So understand that if you support this, that something else may come and it be negative towards you. Like, for instance, when it comes to this birthright citizenship, they said that, it still has to be 30 days before the executive order actually goes into effect. The case won't be over by then. Now, because there cannot be, these universal injunctions, what that means is that this case has to go all the way through and the law has to be determined. For the most part, it has to go through to the Supreme Court. That's years in the making. Sometimes certain things may happen quickly. Hopefully this does. So then we understand what it is, what the law actually is. So therefore we don't have to necessarily worry about this. But it is a big problem with the injunctions. So getting back to, what I was saying about you may not even know about certain things because it may not even make the news because now when, a federal judge does an injunction, it's just for an individual person. So that case may not make the news and you may not even know about certain rights that are being trampled on. And rights can still be trampled on until the law is actually cemented, meaning that until it's actually precedent at the Supreme Court, which could take however long. And they also could determine that they don't even want to rule on it. They only do 100 and something cases a year. And that means that a lot of cases will never ever even get to them. If they don't want to make a decision on something, they just have to not have the correct amount of justices accept the case. So then there won't be a ruling on it. People don't really understand that no matter who you support, whether you support President Trump or not, or even this birthright citizenship thing, how much this decision negatively affects things for most. Now, for some, it's going to be a good thing. But for most, not so much. And one of the issues is that within the decision, the court specifically explained that, it wasn't deciding on the merits because the merits, whether the presidential order violated, the Naturalization Act or any, citizenship rights at all, because that's going to be dealt with in the court. They were just only determining whether or not the courts had the right to even do these universal injunctions, and that was the only thing that was in front of them. So they didn't even decide it. Now, but here's the problem, is that in order to even get an injunction, let me explain this to you. In order to get a federal injunction, the court decides four things. The likelihood of success on the merits. That means that, the judges who issue these injunctions said you're likely going to win on the merits, okay? And that the second thing, that you're likely going to, suffer irreparable harm, in the absence of this preliminary relief. All right. Then that the balance of equities tip in the favor, of the person seeking it. And then finally, that the injunction was in the public interest. Here's the thing. If the injunction is in the public's interest, how then is it not a good thing that the injunction actually goes for the public too? Now, I get it. I didn't read the entire ruling, but I was with the federal court, so I've written orders for a federal judge before, and I get the case law. I understand why those six decided that way. I also understand why the three dissented. Okay, I understand more why the three dissented than why the six decided the way that they did. Because yeah, you could have decided either way, but it's just kind of bad because judges have been doing this, since the 1800s. And now we decide that they've been doing it wrong. Really interesting. But this is going to negatively affect a lot of things because, as we know, this isn't the only thing that Trump is going to test. He's going to test a lot of things because essentially what they're saying is that all these judges who have been trying to stop certain things, they now can't stop them beyond the named plaintiffs. That's a really, really big win for Trump. Huge win. It's a huge win for your team. And what I will tell you is that it more shows how Trump and the Republicans were playing grandmaster level, deep blue level chess dating back to before he was in office the first time versus Democrats and independents. They weren't even playing checkers. They may have been playing tic-tac-toe because it's two totally different things. They put people in the court, whereas when, Democrats and Obama had the chance to put somebody in and it would have changed a lot of stuff, they said, oh, well, okay, well, they want to stop me. All right, I won't use the rules in order to put somebody in. We wouldn't be here if he had done that. Things would be very different if he had done that. I'm not saying he should have done that. I'm just saying things would be very different. Republicans realize, Trump realized, you put people in office, you put people in those positions, and you make it so that those people, they think a certain way, rulings are going to happen a certain way. And it's no surprise, big to do, that the news, the media, and everybody is always saying, okay, you have liberal justices and you have conservative justices, and in most occasions they vote a certain way. Not in all, but in most. Some of them switch around a little bit, some of them don't. So it's just one of those things. Whereas they realized they did certain things that later on it would help them. And it says help. And right now, no matter what the law is, he's able to do most things that he wants to do because, like I explained before, when people say he can't do that, the law may say one thing. However, if there's no one there to stop him from doing things, and not only that, he has support, whether it be the legislature, the court, his party, he can do it. He can do it until somebody stops him. And even when the Supreme Court said, oh, you can't do that and you need to bring that person back, they're like, yeah, we can't do it. What are you going to do about it? You already, right before he went into office, put in, issued case law that basically says that, as long as he's acting within his presidential powers, he can do these things. And, he has immunity. And then even if he doesn't have immunity, he can actually likely pardon himself. He can pardon everyone else for anything federal. And, the power to pardon is really plenary. So what does that mean? Doesn't make a difference what they do. They can do it and they can get away with it. And that's what we are. We are at that point, and people pretty much need to understand that this is where we are. And what are you going to do about it, though? As always, I need you to share this, like, subscribe, and comment. Tell me what you think about this. Yeah, real interesting times we're in.